We'll have order in the committee. Mr. Griffin's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a couple comments first. You know, the surge in these groups that are the subject of this hearing is not related to a Supreme Court case, if there was a surge at all. It's related to the nonsense in Washington. That's why people were getting engaged. In fact, the Supreme Court case that's been so much discussed here has no bearing on these groups. Ultimately, that's ridiculous. What this hearing has demonstrated for me that our most expansive federal powers are given to our most intrusive agency. And then you add on top of that incompetence or whatever else we have, and it's a disaster. You know, my colleague here talks about asking people how much money they've got in their wallet. I got a text last night at dinner from a friend of mine who's a supporter in Arkansas, in Little Rock. He's being audited. Yesterday morning, he had to meet with the IRS. He was outraged. He sent me a text. He said, they asked me, how much cash do you carry in your wallet? How much cash does your wife carry in her wallet? Do you use the internet? You know, I don't care what rules are written down or not written down. These people ought to have enough common sense to know that this is just stupid to ask this kind of stuff. And if they don't know that on their own without something written in a regulation, they ought to quit or be fired. It's craziness. Now, I've known you for a long time, General, and I've looked at your investigation. I appreciate the work you've done. It's really an audit. Let's be clear to the press. This is not an investigation. You did not request emails. You did not do what you would do in an investigation. There's a reason you don't know who came up with this. You didn't investigate that. You might be now. Are you?
I'm not in a position, sir, to discuss whether or not.
That means you are. Okay. So the bottom line is, for those looking, this is an audit, and it's helpful. But it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's looking at metrics and interviewing some folks. We worked together years ago up here on the hill, right in the building next to us. And we know how important emails are. And I trust that you're going to get to the bottom of the emails. Now, let me just mention real quickly. If you want to know where a lot of this comes from, look at Senator Levin's letter. Senator Levin specifically mentioned a bunch of the groups that y'all targeted. The other senators made the points, but they didn't mention specific groups. It was Senator Levin's letter. To some extent, y'all were doing what Democrat senators were asking. A lot of the press here ought to go to the Senate when you're done and ask them some questions. Now, with regard to Sarah Hall Ingram, you may have been confused as to when she worked there, but she was there from 2009 to 2012. You said you had horrendous customer service. And what happened to her? She got $100,000 in bonuses, and she was promoted. Wow. Incredible. You said the buck stops with you. Well, it stopped with her before that. She was directly in charge of these rules, of this targeting. What'd she get? Bonuses and moved to a job. And you know what her job is now? She's coordinating Section 1414 of Obamacare. What is that? That's the provision that says that there is an exemption or an exception to disclosure of tax information. What is that? That means the Treasury can share your tax information with HHS for the purposes of implementing Obamacare to see whether you have got a really expensive health care plan or what have you. It's right there in Section 1414. So she provided horrendous customer service under her watch, and now she's going to do the same implementing Obamacare. Swell. This is a perfect example of why we need tax reform. If you want to diminish and limit the power of the IRS, you've got to reduce the complexity of the tax code and take them out of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Renacci is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, as a CPA who's represented many taxpayers in the last 3 decades,